What do you want, Phil?
I want to know what your game is.
There is no game. What's it got to do with you, anyway?
At 55, Adam Woodyatt finally reveals what EastEnders fans always suspected. For decades, EastEnders fans have adored Adam Woodyatt as Ian Beale, the shrewd, awkward, and often misunderstood businessman of Albert Square. From the very first episode in 1985, Ian became a household name, a character who grew up on screen before the eyes of millions. But behind the character lay Adam Woodyatt, the man who lived and breathed Ian for more than 35 years. Now at 55, Adam has revealed what fans long suspected, that the role which brought him fame, fortune, and recognition also came at an extraordinary personal cost. It was more than a job. It consumed his life, shaped his identity, and at times trapped him in a way he could no longer ignore. But before we get to Adam's revelation, we must go back to the very beginning, to his childhood in London, to the years before fame, and to the moment he was cast in a role that would forever change his life. Adam Brinley Woodyatt was born on the 28th of June, 1968, in Walthamstow, East London. Unlike many of his soap contemporaries, who came into acting through years of theater training or family connections, Adam's early life was modest and straightforward. His father worked as a policeman, and his mother as a homemaker, and the Woodyatt household carried the values of hard work, discipline, and keeping your feet firmly on the ground. Adam's school years were much like any other boys in East London during the 1970s, but even from an early age, he had a spark that set him apart. Teachers noticed his confidence and presence, particularly when he was asked to read aloud or take part in school plays. While others shied away from the spotlight, Adam embraced it. That spark only grew when he enrolled at the Sylvia Young Theatre School, one of the most prestigious drama schools for young performers. Here, Adam honed his craft alongside other future stars, gaining early experience in stage productions and small television roles. For his parents, it was a leap of faith. Theater wasn't a typical career choice for a boy from Walthamstow. But Adam's determination was evident. He wasn't chasing glamour. He was chasing the thrill of performance. By his teenage years, Adam was already making small appearances in adverts and stage productions. These weren't glamorous parts, but they gave him a taste of professional acting and the discipline that came with it. At the age of 16, he appeared in the stage version of On the Razzle, directed by Sir Peter Hall. For a working-class boy from East London, performing under the direction of one of Britain's great theatre figures was a huge step forward. Still, no one could have predicted what came next. Adam was on the cusp of something that would not only define his life, but also tie him to one of the most recognizable characters in British television history. In the early 1980s, the BBC was preparing a bold new project. Inspired by the success of American soaps and ITV's Coronation Street, they planned a drama that would capture everyday working-class life in the East End of London. The project was called EastEnders, and it would soon become the BBC's crown jewel. Casting directors wanted authenticity. They weren't looking for polished stars or glamorous faces. They wanted characters that looked and sounded real. When Adam, then just 17, auditioned, he fitted perfectly into their vision. He wasn't the most striking or traditionally handsome, but he had something better: believability. He could be the awkward, ambitious teenager they had in mind. In 1985, Adam Woodyatt was cast as Ian Beale, the son of Pete and Kathy Beale. From the very first episode, broadcast on the 19th of February, 1985, Ian was there, wide-eyed, slightly awkward, yet instantly recognizable as the boy next door of Albert Square. At first, Ian was never meant to be the center of the drama. The Beales, the Fowlers, and the Watts families were all introduced together, and no one expected Ian to become the longest-serving face of the show. But almost immediately, audiences connected with him. He wasn't glamorous or heroic. He was ordinary. He had flaws, ambitions, and insecurities that felt real. Through his early storylines, Ian Beale tried to break away from his father's market stall to chase bigger dreams. He was a boy who wanted more than the life laid out for him, and Adam captured that restless ambition perfectly. By the end of EastEnders' first year, it was clear that Ian Beale wasn't just another character. He was going to be a central figure in Walford's future. For Adam, it was surreal. At just 17, he had gone from small stage productions to being recognized on the streets as Ian Beale. Overnight, his life had changed. He wasn't just Adam anymore, he was Ian, and fans didn't always separate the two. What began as a job quickly became a career. And what became a career would soon become a burden he never expected to carry for more than 3 decades. When EastEnders first aired in February 1985, few people could have imagined the cultural impact it would have on British television. It wasn't just another soap. It was gritty, it was raw, and it reflected the working-class life of London in a way that felt unfiltered and real. And right in the middle of it was Adam Woodyatt as Ian Beale, a boy barely out of school himself, now playing a character who would come to symbolize the very essence of Albert Square. In the beginning, Ian was almost comic relief, the awkward teenager trying too hard to impress girls and struggling to live up to his father Pete's expectations. But as the years rolled on, the character evolved, and so did Adam's performance. Ian became ambitious, sometimes ruthless, and at other times deeply insecure. He was the boy who wanted to escape the market stall, but found himself chained to it in more ways than one. By the late 1980s, Ian Beale had grown into one of the square's most recognizable faces. His storylines expanded from teenage awkwardness to business ventures, marriages, and betrayals. Audiences watched him transform into a man who was always chasing success, but rarely finding happiness. Adam captured this transformation with a balance of humor and vulnerability. He could make audiences laugh one week and then break their hearts the next. The 1990s cemented Ian Beale's status as one of EastEnders' central figures. His failed marriages, his troubled relationship with his parents, and his endless schemes made him a character audiences loved to hate. At one point, Ian had been married 5 times, with each union ending in heartbreak, betrayal, or scandal. Every twist made headlines, and through it all, Adam remained at the center, week after week, year after year. But Ian Beale wasn't just a figure of ridicule or pity. Some of his storylines were among the most dramatic and heartbreaking the show ever attempted. In 1996, Ian's daughter Lucy was born, beginning a storyline that would later define some of Adam's most powerful performances. Years later, the shocking murder of Lucy in 2014 was one of the soap's biggest ever whodunit storylines. Adam's portrayal of Ian's grief, raw, broken, and desperate, earned critical acclaim. Even those who mocked Ian Beale's constant misfortunes admitted Adam Woodyatt was delivering some of the finest acting in soap history. And yet, while Ian's storylines were written for drama, Adam's reality was far more complicated. For decades, he lived with the weight of being inseparable from his character. There was no break, no pause, no fresh start. By the time he reached his 30s, Adam had already spent more than half his life as Ian Beale. By his 40s, the line between the man and the character had blurred almost completely. Public recognition became overwhelming. Unlike film stars who could retreat between projects, Soap actors lived in the homes of viewers multiple times a week. Fans didn't just watch Ian Beale, they believed they knew him. Adam was constantly approached in the street, in restaurants, even on holiday. And no matter where he went, people rarely called him Adam. They called him Ian. It wasn't just the audience who depended on him. The BBC did too. By the 2000s, Adam had become the longest-serving cast member of EastEnders. Writers leaned heavily on Ian Beale because they knew Adam could deliver. He was a safe pair of hands, a familiar face in an ever-changing cast. When other actors came and went, Adam remained, the constant thread that tied together decades of storylines. But being that constant came with a price. For Adam, the relentless schedule was draining. EastEnders filmed up to 5 episodes a week, with early mornings, long days, and little chance for outside work. While other actors could pursue theater, films, or different television projects, Adam rarely had that freedom. The BBC's grip on his time was absolute. For many years, he didn't just play Ian Beale, he was Ian Beale, both on-screen and off. Still, he carried on. He carried EastEnders through highs and lows, through record-breaking ratings and inevitable slumps. He endured endless storylines, some brilliant, some less so, always doing his best to give Ian depth and realism. He became the soap's backbone, not always the flashiest or the most loved, but the one who kept the square ticking. As the decades passed, Adam's connection to Ian Beale became both his greatest strength and his greatest burden. He was part of British television history, but he was also trapped in it. And by the time he reached his 50s, Adam Woodyatt began to realize that carrying EastEnders for 35 years had come at a cost he could no longer ignore. For millions of viewers, Ian Beale was a familiar face they grew up with. Children who watched him in the 1980s later saw their own children watching him in the 2000s. He was more than a character. He was part of the family. But for Adam Woodyatt, that kind of longevity came with pressures very few actors could understand. Unlike actors in films or limited series, soap stars don't get time away from their roles. There is no long pause between projects, no months of anonymity to recover before the next role. For Adam, the EastEnders schedule was relentless. The cameras rolled almost all year round, with only brief breaks between blocks of filming. While other actors moved between genres, Adam was expected to keep returning to Albert Square, day after day, for more than 3 decades. This meant that for Adam, his professional and personal life often blurred. He could scarcely walk down a street without being recognized. At the supermarket, people would call him Ian. On family holidays, strangers would approach him with questions about Walford. Even in restaurants, meals could be interrupted by fans eager to meet Ian Beale. At first, Adam accepted this as part of the job. He was proud of the recognition, and he valued the connection audiences felt to his character. But over the years, it became suffocating. Unlike film stars who could transform into different roles, Adam found himself typecast, his face permanently associated with Ian. As one of the most recognizable soap characters in Britain, anonymity was a luxury he never knew. The intensity of the job also affected his health. Soap filming required long hours, emotional performances, and endless lines to memorize. There was little time for recovery, little chance to pursue other creative outlets. Adam spoke in later years about how draining it was, and how the constant grind left him mentally and physically exhausted. At home, life wasn't always easier. Adam had married dancer Beverly Sharp in 1998, and together they had 2 children. For years, Beverly provided stability, while Adam worked the relentless EastEnders schedule. But fame has a way of seeping into private life. With Adam constantly in the public eye, the family could never truly escape the shadow of EastEnders. Holidays, birthdays, even simple days out often became a reminder that Adam was not just a husband or father. He was Ian Beale to everyone else. As the years passed, cracks began to show. The pressures of fame and the demands of the soap took their toll on Adam's marriage. After more than 20 years together, Adam and Beverly separated in 2019. The divorce was played out in the press, another reminder that Adam's personal life was never fully his own. For him, the breakdown of his marriage was a deeply painful period, one that forced him to look at his life and reassess where he was heading. And it wasn't just his marriage. Financially, Adam faced difficulties too. Despite being one of the highest-paid soap actors, the costs of divorce and lifestyle changes left him in a difficult position. At one point, tabloids reported that he was living in a motorhome, parked at campsites around the country while touring with stage productions. For someone who had once been one of the most recognizable faces on British television, it was a stark reminder of how quickly life can change. Through it all, Adam carried the weight of Ian Beale. For 35 years, he delivered the performances the BBC demanded. He endured the headlines, the typecasting, the exhaustion. But inside, he was beginning to feel trapped. He had grown up on the show, spent his entire adult life as Ian, and by his early 50s, he admitted to himself what many fans had long suspected. The role had consumed him. He was no longer sure where Ian Beale ended and Adam Woodyatt began. By the late 2010s, Adam Woodyatt had been playing Ian Beale for more than 3 decades. On screen, his character had suffered countless failed marriages, financial collapses, betrayals, and heartbreaks. Off-screen, Adam was heading towards a crisis of his own. In 1998, Adam had married dancer Beverly Sharp in a ceremony attended by close friends and fellow EastEnders cast members. The couple went on to have 2 children together, a son, Samuel, and a daughter, Jessica. For years, Adam spoke about how Beverly gave him the stability he needed to survive the chaos of soap life. While the world saw him as Ian Beale, Beverly kept his feet on the ground. But as the years went on, the pressures of fame, long filming schedules, and public recognition began to wear on the marriage. Adam was often away on set, juggling intense filming commitments, while Beverly held the family together. What looked like a stable home from the outside was, in reality, under strain. By 2019, the marriage had collapsed. Adam and Beverly separated after more than 2 decades together. The divorce, which became public in the tabloids, was not an amicable split. Reports circulated of disagreements over money and property. The press dissected every detail, turning Adam's private pain into a public spectacle. For a man who had lived most of his adult life in the spotlight, the breakdown of his marriage was a harsh reminder that his personal struggles would never remain private. What made the situation even harder for Adam was the eerie similarity between his real life and the storylines that had defined Ian Beale. Just like his on-screen character, Adam was now a man facing the collapse of his marriage, financial uncertainty, and emotional turmoil. Fans couldn't help but notice the parallels, and for Adam, that comparison was almost unbearable. Ian Beale had been written to endure endless cycles of tragedy, and now Adam felt like his own life was echoing that same script. The divorce left Adam in a difficult position financially. Despite years of high earnings from the BBC, the costs of separation, combined with the loss of stability at home, meant his lifestyle changed dramatically. Tabloids reported that he had left the family home and was living in a motorhome while touring the country with a stage play. Photographs of Adam at caravan parks and campsites quickly made their way into the press, sparking commentary on how far he had fallen from his EastEnders peak. For Adam, this period was one of the lowest points of his life. Not only was he dealing with personal heartbreak, but he was also beginning to question his relationship with EastEnders. He had spent more than 35 years as Ian Beale, and the role had given him financial stability, fame, and a place in television history. But it had also taken from him time with his family, opportunities for other roles, and in some ways, his very identity. By 2020, with his marriage over and his personal life in turmoil, Adam made a decision that shocked both the industry and the millions of fans who had watched him for decades. He stepped away from EastEnders. After 35 years, Ian Beale disappeared from Albert Square, and for the first time since 1985, Adam Woodyatt was no longer tied to the role that had defined his life. It was a decision born not only from professional exhaustion, but also from personal necessity. The collapse of his marriage had forced Adam to rethink who he was and what he wanted for the future. And as painful as it was, the divorce became the turning point that pushed him to break free from the character who had consumed him for so long. For 35 years, Adam Woodyatt was a fixture of British television. Since 1985, there had not been a year when Ian Beale wasn't somewhere on Albert Square, scheming, struggling, falling in and out of love, or chasing the next big business idea. For millions of fans, he was as much a part of the East End as the Queen Vic itself. That's why, in 2020, when Adam announced he was stepping away from EastEnders, it sent shockwaves across the country. The timing made the exit even more dramatic. The world was in the grip of the COVID-19 pandemic, and television production had slowed, with schedules thrown into chaos. In the middle of this uncertainty, Adam quietly confirmed that he was leaving the soap he had called home since his teenage years. For many fans, it was unthinkable. Adam Woodyatt and Ian Beale were inseparable. How could EastEnders carry on without him? On screen, Ian's departure was written with as much drama as one might expect. In late 2020, Ian Beale was at the center of a poisoning storyline that gripped audiences. His feud with Sharon Watts reached breaking point. And in true soap fashion, the character was left broken, betrayed, and finally walking away from Walford. It was a fittingly messy exit for a man who had spent decades embroiled in scandal after scandal. But off-screen, Adam's reasons for leaving were far more personal. At first, the BBC described it as a break. They insisted Adam wasn't gone for good, that Ian Beale might one day return. But Adam himself was more cautious with his words. After 35 years, he admitted he needed space. Space to find out who he was without the constant weight of Ian Beale. For so long, his life had been defined by the square. Every birthday, every Christmas, every family holiday had to be planned around filming. Adam confessed that he had simply had enough. The media quickly seized on the story. Headlines asked whether Adam's departure was permanent, whether he had fallen out with producers, or whether personal issues had forced his hand. Speculation ran wild. Some claimed he had been pushed out to make way for new blood. Others insisted his personal troubles, particularly the collapse of his marriage, had made the role impossible to continue. Adam, however, gave a simpler explanation. After 3.5 decades, he needed to take a break from being Ian Beale. It wasn't that he hated the character, far from it. He admitted he owed everything to Ian, from his financial security to his place in television history. But playing the same person for 35 years had taken its toll. He was no longer sure where Ian ended and Adam began. For fans, his words confirmed what many had long suspected. Ian Beale had consumed Adam Woodyatt's life. He had been trapped in the role, unable to move on. unable to explore other opportunities. At 55, Adam finally admitted it. The part that made him had also confined him. The BBC left the door open for his return, and Adam himself refused to rule it out. But as the months passed, it became clear that he was serious about stepping away. For the first time since 1985, he was free to explore new projects, new roles, and most importantly, a new identity outside of Walford. But while his decision to leave was liberating, it was also daunting. Adam had spent his entire adult life inside EastEnders. Now, with his personal life in pieces and his professional future uncertain, he faced the biggest challenge of his career, proving he could be more than just Ian Beale. For the first time in his adult life, Adam Woodyatt was no longer tied to the East End of Albert Square. After 35 years, the role that had defined him, and at times consumed him, was finally in the past. But with that freedom came a challenge. How do you reinvent yourself after spending more than 3 decades as the same character? Adam didn't waste time retreating from the public eye. Instead, he threw himself into new opportunities. One of his first moves after leaving EastEnders was to return to his roots, the stage. Theater had been his earliest passion, and for years the relentless soap schedule had kept him away from it. Now, he finally had the freedom to pursue it again. In 2021, Adam joined the national tour of Looking Good Dead, a stage adaptation of Peter James's best-selling crime novel. For audiences, it was a chance to see Adam in a completely different light. Gone was Ian Beale, the perpetually unlucky businessman of Walford. In his place was Tom Bryce, a character with his own dark secrets. It wasn't just another job, it was a statement. Adam was showing the industry and himself that he could step out of Ian's shadow. The tour wasn't always glamorous. Adam lived out of a motorhome during much of the production, traveling from town to town. Tabloids had a field day, painting his life on the road as a fall from grace. In reality, Adam seemed to embrace the simplicity. For years, his life had been defined by routine and by the confines of a single square in East London. Now he was traveling, performing, and rediscovering his independence. Then came the move no one expected. I'm a celebrity. Get me out of here. In 2021, Adam entered the popular ITV reality show, taking him far from the Queen Vic and into the campfire chaos of the Welsh castle. The series was relocated due to the pandemic. For fans, it was surreal. For decades, they had only ever known him as Ian Beale. Now, they were watching the real Adam, joking, struggling with the trials, and revealing glimpses of the man behind the soap character. The show gave Adam something he had rarely been afforded before, the chance to be himself in front of the camera. He wasn't playing Ian, he wasn't reciting lines written for him by producers, and he wasn't stuck in Walford. He was simply Adam Woodyatt, a man rediscovering his own identity after 35 years of playing someone else. But reinvention wasn't just about career. Personally, Adam was rebuilding too. With his divorce finalized and his life on a new path, he focused on health and self-discipline. Fans who saw him on I'm a Celebrity noticed how much weight he had lost, a physical transformation that mirrored the changes in his life. He spoke openly about his fitness journey and how stepping away from EastEnders had given him the space to prioritize his own well-being. Still, Adam knew reinvention would not happen overnight. For millions, he would always be Ian Beale. That name carried with it both love and mockery, recognition and typecasting. But with every new role, every public appearance, he was slowly separating himself from the character who had defined his career. For Adam, This period of reinvention was not about running from Ian Beale. It was about proving that Ian was only one part of his story. He had more to give, as an actor, as a performer, and as a man finally carving his own path. For years, fans speculated about Adam Woodyatt's true feelings towards EastEnders. They wondered whether he loved the role of Ian Beale, or whether he felt trapped by it. Was he still passionate about playing the same man after 3 decades? Or was he simply going through the motions? Adam rarely spoke openly about it while he was still under contract with the BBC. But at 55, he finally revealed the truth. In interviews following his departure, Adam admitted that his decision to step away had been building for a long time. Playing Ian Beale had given him financial stability, recognition, and a place in British television history. But it had also consumed him. He explained how the relentless filming schedule had left him with little space to explore other roles, how every part of his life had to be built around EastEnders, and how, for years, he struggled to separate himself from his on-screen identity. Adam confessed that he had stayed on the show as long as he did not just out of love for the role, but also out of security. The pay was steady, the work was constant, and with a family to support, walking away was never an option. It was a job for life, he explained, but one that came at the cost of freedom. Fans had long suspected this. They could sense the weariness in interviews, the rare moments when Adam hinted at frustration. They saw how his personal life seemed to mirror Ian's endless cycle of misfortune, and many wondered whether he was truly happy playing the role. Now, Adam confirmed it. Ian Beale had given him everything, but he had also taken everything. For Adam, the revelation wasn't bitter. He didn't speak with resentment or anger towards the BBC or the show. Instead, he was candid, reflective, and honest. He admitted that he owed his career to EastEnders, but he also acknowledged the personal sacrifices it demanded. In one interview, Adam put it plainly, "I've been Ian Beale for 35 years. That's most of my life. It got to the point where I didn't know where Ian ended, and I began." Those words struck a chord with fans. It was the very thing they had suspected for decades. The man and the character had blurred together, leaving Adam searching for his own identity outside of Walford. At 55, Adam Woodyatt finally voiced what so many had believed all along, that behind the fame and the fortune, the role of Ian Beale had trapped him in a cycle he could only escape by walking away. It was a revelation that humanized him in the eyes of fans. He wasn't just an actor who wanted more money or new roles. He was a man who had grown up in the spotlight, given his entire adult life to a single character, and finally reached the point where he had to reclaim himself. For Adam, that honesty was liberating. And for fans, it was confirmation of what they always suspected, that even the most iconic roles can come at a heavy price. When Adam Woodyatt first walked onto Albert Square in 1985, no one could have predicted the legacy he would leave behind. At just 17, he was a boy from East London stepping into a brand new soap opera. 35 years later, he was the longest-serving actor in EastEnders history, the only original cast member still standing, and the face of one of Britain's most enduring television dramas. His journey wasn't glamorous. Ian Beale was never the heartthrob of Walford, never the hero who saved the day, and never the villain audiences loved to hate. Instead, Ian was something rarer, a deeply flawed, often unlikable but always recognizable character. He was ambitious, insecure, selfish at times, and endlessly unlucky. And yet, that was precisely why viewers connected with him. Ian Beale wasn't larger than life. He was life. Messy, complicated, and human. Adam brought him to life with such dedication that the line between the man and the character eventually blurred. For decades, viewers struggled to separate Adam from Ian. In interviews, in restaurants, even on holiday, he was always called Ian. And while this recognition secured his place in television history, it also became the very burden that pushed him to step away. When Adam left EastEnders in 2020, the show lost more than just a character. It lost its thread of continuity, the bridge that linked the very first episode to the modern era. Without Ian Beale, Albert Square felt different. The heart of the Beale family, once so central to the show, was fractured. For many fans, his absence confirmed just how vital Adam had been, not only to the program, but to British culture itself. But Adam's legacy is not just in the number of episodes he filmed or the decades he gave to the Square. It lies in his honesty. At 55, he admitted what fans always suspected, that the role which gave him everything also took much from him. That truth resonates far beyond soap opera. It is the story of what happens when art and life become inseparable, when the price of stability is personal identity, and when the pursuit of a career leaves little space for self. For Adam, his legacy is still being written. He continues to reinvent himself, on stage, on reality television, and in his personal life. He is no longer just Ian Beale, but Adam Woodyatt, actor, performer, and man rediscovering who he is outside of Albert Square. Yet no matter what roles he takes on in the future, Adam's place in history is secure. He will always be remembered as the boy from Walthamstow who became Britain's longest-serving soap actor, the man who carried EastEnders for 35 years, and the figure who finally stepped out of his character's shadow to reclaim his own life. For the millions of fans who watched him grow up on screen, Adam Woodyatt will always be part of their story. And for Adam, his revelation at 55 marked the beginning of a new chapter, one written not for Ian Beale, but for himself. Adam Woodyatt's story is more than just the tale of an actor tied to one role. It's a reminder of how fame can both build and confine, how the lines between character and person can blur until they are almost indistinguishable, and how even the most recognizable figures must one day step away to find themselves again. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, comment, and turn on post notifications to stay updated with our latest content.